Okay.
$10. There you go. Enjoy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hold on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Made in response to a question about a different spurious claim. This one made by White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer, who in an attempt to defend President Trump on this evidence-free wiretapping claim invoked various sources of information to try to build something resembling a case for his boss, one that made up for what it lacked in actual proof in length. Spicer invoked stories having nothing to do with the president's charge, websites you've never heard of, but most significantly, he said this.
Last, on Fox News on March 14th, Judge Andrew Napolitano made the following statement, quote, 3 intelligence sources have informed Fox News that President Obama went outside the chain of command. He didn't use the NSA, he didn't use the CIA, he didn't use the FBI, and he didn't use the Department of Justice. He used GCHQ.
GCHQ, the Government Communications Headquarters. That's the British equivalent of the NSA. President Obama, of course, did not have the power to use the British intelligence to spy on anyone, and such would have been a violation of the intelligence agreement between the U.S. and the U.K. Now, you're going to have to ask the actual journalists at Fox News Channel why they never repeated this claim from Judge Napolitano. Actually, you know what? Spoiler alert. You don't have to ask. I'll tell you. It's because they have no confidence that it's true. The GCHQ, which rarely comments on such matters, took the unusual step of saying that the Napolitano-Spicer charge is, quote, utterly ridiculous and should be ignored. The British National Security Advisor, Sir Mark Lyle Grant, and the UK ambassador to the US after the Spicer charge was made, contacted the US National Security Advisor, General H.R. McMaster, as well as Spicer, after which the spokesman for the British Prime Minister said the White House had reassured the UK that Spicer would not repeat the allegations. The president's response to this embarrassment today? Take a listen.
We said nothing. All we did was quote a certain very talented legal mind who was the one responsible for saying that on television. I didn't make an opinion on it.
The White House apparently unaware that when the White House in the world's most powerful nation cites a news story as proof of what the President of the United States has said, that tends to suggest to people that you think you believe the story you're citing as proof. Now, 2 weeks ago tomorrow, President Trump made a wild claim on Twitter. There's no evidence, nor is there any credible source who knows anything about intelligence who believes the charge that President Obama tapped Donald Trump's phones at Trump Tower. But now, in a fevered effort to try to force this outlandish claim into something remotely resembling, passably, perhaps, maybe, the truth, the White House appears actually willing to repeat another wild accusation that potentially could alienate our nation's most important ally. Does smearing British intelligence make your family more safe? No? So why is the White House doing it? What is the White House defending here? Because it damn sure isn't national security or American credibility before the world. Our senior White House correspondent, Jim Acosta, was at the news conference, and he joins me now. Jim, Sean Spicer's comments caused an international incident, but he's not backing down. But you have some new information. Fox News now responding to the Napolitano nonsense.
That's right, Jake. Not only is Sean Spicer not backing down, President Trump is not backing down. During that news conference, President Trump said to that German reporter, "You shouldn't be talking to me. You should be talking to Fox." And apparently Fox News does have more to say about this, but we should point out White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said to me as we were all leading the news conference that no apology was offered to the British government. We and other news outlets have reported that the White House and Trump administration did apologize to the British government for Sean Spicer making that claim and passing on that claim from Judge Andrew Napolitano from Fox News yesterday. Sean Spicer told me after the news conference, well, we were just passing on various news reports. But just a little while ago, Jake, within the last hour, Shepard Smith, an anchor over at Fox News, said they cannot substantiate what Andrew Napolitano said on Fox News. Here's what he had to say.
Fox News cannot confirm Judge Napolitano's commentary. Fox News knows of no evidence of any kind that the now President of the United States was surveilled at any time in any way. Full stop.
It doesn't get more clear than that, Jake. And the president earlier today, we should point out, during a meeting with Republican lawmakers about health care up on Capitol Hill, once again used the term fake news. But make no mistake, what Sean Spicer passed on to reporters yesterday appears to meet the definition of fake news. The president did not withdraw that claim today. He said you should talk to Fox. Well, Fox says it's wrong. Jake?
And Jim, President Trump's comments about wiretapping, they're clearly a headline. But beyond that story, this news conference between two uneasy allies was pretty remarkable.
It really was. I mean, keep in mind, during the campaign, President Trump, then candidate Trump, went after Angela Merkel on occasion and basically blasted her policy of allowing Syrian refugees into her country. At one point, he tweeted that Angela Merkel was ruining her country. He said this in a December 2015 tweet, expressing some dismay that he was not chosen as Times Person of the Year and that she was chosen as Times Person of the Year. And then during this news conference, I think you heard Angela Merkel refer to this to some extent when she said we should not be talking about each other, we should be talking to each other. The German Chancellor, who's pretty good at keeping a very straight poker face when it comes to being on the international stage, essentially let the president know that, hey, in the future, we should be talking to each other, not making comments about one another. And it was an interesting moment, I think, between these two leaders, Jake.
Jim Acosta, thank you so much. I'm joined now by Congresswoman Jackie Spears. She's a Democrat from California. She's on the House Intelligence Committee. Congresswoman, thanks so much for being here. So let's make clear, just have you heard of any evidence or any suggestion that Great Britain or any ally might have wiretapped President Trump or Trump Tower?
No. You know, we have spent so much time on this spurious allegation by the president that it's really affecting our ability to do our work. And it's creating, as we have just seen, an international incident. There is no truth to anything the president has said relative to that. And I might add, right now, President Obama has a really good slander case because there's much malice associated with the statement by President Trump that is totally false.
Well, obviously the UK and the US have a very important and special relationship. And to be frank, probably the UK needs the US a little bit more than the reverse is true, just because we're a much bigger, wealthier, and powerful country. But I'm wondering if you think even within that context, this might affect the relationship with the UK.
You know, I don't think one incident is going to affect our relationship because it's a very close and cooperative relationship, has existed for, centuries. And the intelligence relationship, the Five Eyes, as we refer to them, it's the UK, it's Australia, it's Canada, all of us together work very closely. We need them too. Don't forget that we have a base, a very important base in the UK, and we work very closely together on intelligence to keep the world safe.
Yeah, I don't mean to belittle at all how much the United States relies on the UK. I just meant within the context of they need us, how damaging could this really be? But let me ask you, you're a member of the House Intelligence Committee. This afternoon, the Justice Department responded to questions from your committee seeking any information on this claim by the president that he was wiretapped. Is there anything you can tell us about the Justice Department's response?
Well, there's nothing I can tell you, but everyone who has spoken on this issue has been very clear. There is no there. And the more we speak about this totally false wiretapping issue, is less time we speak about how they're taking affordable out of the Affordable Care Act, how we're not talking about the really dangerous relationships that probably exist in the Trump orbit with those of Russia, and reminding ourselves that Russia committed an act of war against the United States when it interfered with our elections. And they are attempting to do that in countries throughout Europe right now, and we have got to take steps to get to the bottom of it and make sure it doesn't happen again.
And that, of course, is the most important issue in all of this. Is Vladimir Putin's biggest desire is for the dissolution of the EU, for the dissolution of NATO, for the United States to withdraw so that Russia can seek power centers in Europe. What concerns do you have about that? Do you see any specific actions by the Trump administration that the U.S. is pulling back at all from Europe?
Decision to deploy the American THAAD missile defense shield, which Beijing sees as a threat to its own nuclear deterrent. Beijing now banning South Korean imports and preventing Chinese tourists from traveling there to change Seoul's mind.
We believe these actions are unnecessary, and we believe they're troubling.
And Tillerson is also set in Beijing to lay the groundwork for the visit for the first ever meeting between President Trump and Chinese. In Beijing to lay the groundwork for the visit for the first ever meeting between President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping next month at Mar-a-Lago. North Korea will definitely be at the top of that agenda. Tillerson will reiterate the message he delivered today that the U.S. is not adverse to diplomacy, but only
parking mode disabled.
Its weapons programs. That is not a message, Jake, that the Chinese are going to be eager to hear.
All right, Elise Lavin, thank you so much. Coming up, new questions swirling around the U.S. Secret Service over a White House security breach and a stolen laptop filled with sensitive documents. Stay with us.
Jumper to win. The excitement of the NCAA men's basketball tournament is on SiriusXM. Hear every second of every action-filled game, every buzzer beater. Puts it up. Every Cinderella story, from the opening tip until they cut down the nets in Arizona. 68 teams, all with one dream. Track every step of your school's journey through the bracket on SiriusXM. Get our complete NCAA tournament schedule at SiriusXM.com/SiriusXM. Get our complete NCAA tournament schedule at SiriusXM.com/college basketball schedule.
If you've ever thought about going to therapy but found it too inconvenient, too expensive, or even too embarrassing to make it to an office, then give Talkspace a try. Talkspace is the online therapy company, and they make it easy to connect with a licensed therapist, handpicked just for you, for as little as $32 a week. Using Talkspace, you can text, audio, and video message your therapist when you want, which means you don't have to wait weeks for your next appointment. Your dedicated Talkspace therapist can listen to you vent about your work or family, explore your relationships with people around you, and help put you on the path to a happier life. To sign up or to learn more, go to Talkspace.com/satellite. That's Talkspace.com/satellite. And for a limited time, you can use code SATELLITE to get $30 off your first month. That's code SATELLITE and Talkspace.com/satellite. Take your first step towards happiness with Talkspace. Therapy for how we live today.
When was the last time your bra was so comfortable you forgot to take it off? Can't remember, right? Hi, I'm Heidi Zach, the founder of Third Love.
And I'm Raelle Cohen, head of design.
I started Third Love to give women bras they'd want to wear 24/7.
Because believe it or not, 50% of women fall in between standard bra sizes.
So, in addition to offering A through G, we developed half cups. Shoes have half sizes, why shouldn't bras?
Glamour magazine even named our t-shirt bra the most comfortable bra ever.
InStyle said our t-shirt bra is perfection.
Elle magazine calls our approach revolutionary.
Millions of women agree and only wear Third Love. With thousands of 5-star reviews, we're sure you will too.
And we're that confident. You can try one of our bras for free for 30 days. Wear it, wash it, really live in it. If you don't love it, no problem. Returns and exchanges are easy and free.
Go to thirdlove.com/news to find a better fitting bra. That's thirdlove.com/news for this exclusive offer. thirdlove.com/news.
Over 3 million businesses use Indeed.com for hiring, and individuals Independent research shows that 5 times more hires are made through Indeed than any other job site. By creating the easiest, most effective hiring experience, we help businesses find great new people every day. Right now, we're giving new users a $50 credit to post a sponsored job on the world's #1 job site. Claim your $50 credit at Indeed.com/XM. Terms, conditions, and quality standards apply.
I'm Jay Farner, president of Quicken Loans. Right now is a great time to buy.
Broke the law. This allegation repeated from the podium by the White House press secretary, who also, by the way, is the official spokesman for the U.S. government, implies that our closest allies' intelligence agency has broken the law in order to spy on him. It's a really remarkable thing to have happened, and the White House's response that they were just repeating something that was being talked about in the news is not sufficient when you consider that this is the official word of this government. When the words come out of Sean Spicer's mouth, they matter, and it seems to be there has been no acknowledgement of that from this White House thus far.
And it's also unusual because German Chancellor Angela Merkel, her and her government were actually spied upon by the United States, by the National Security Agency, as we learned from WikiLeaks. Her government were actually spied upon by the United States, by the National Security Agency, as we learned from WikiLeaks. And President Trump...
Parking mode disabled.
That she actually was a legitimate target of American surveillance. One can only imagine what the German chancellor thinks when she hears her very legitimate gripe with the U.S. intelligence community compared to the president.
Absolutely. This is one of those things where the president kind of threw this joke out there speaking before reporters, and he just laid it out there. But it's one of those things where this did happen to her, and this is the wiretapping claim that Trump is alluding to. I mean, it's been widely debunked here in the U.S. By the Senate panel this week, and it's just one of those things that he keeps kind of going on with, and it's been widely debunked.
And Bill Kristol, I want to play for you what a Republican Congressman, Tom Cole, a Republican from Oklahoma, told our Capitol Hill reporter Manu Raju. Take a listen.
Frankly, unless you can produce some pretty compelling proof, and I think the president...
to reach their mouth with food on their fork or a spoon by closing their eyes, and they're at home. But God knows why. When they're here, they can't do it.
We should ask our producer Bob how he's doing over there.
I'm cheating easy with my hands.
Can I ask you, as a partially sighted person, how do you feel serving people here? Does it give you a sense of power? Because I'm afraid that our poor old Bob, our producers, I'm feeling a little bit like it's nice that the tables are turned. Do you ever feel like that?
No, I don't have that feeling of power. I just hope at the end of the experience they will have a better understanding.
The first impression was this image of just whoosh, all of this light blasting into my eye at once.
Mike May, after being blind for 43 years and a champion skier, chose to have an operation that would potentially give him some useful sight back.
I was mostly against it. It was expensive, it would take lots of time, I was busy, I was happy. But in the end, one major factor won out, which was curiosity.
Did anything change after you got some sight back?
My vision at slow speeds, walking, can be useful. I can see the flowers, and that's nice. But when you're skiing and you're going much faster, what I see is very distressing. I see a dark thing, and that could be a shadow, could be a person, a tree, or a hole. And the only one of those things that's safe is the shadow.
Why was the sight to such a tender ball as the eye confined? So obvious and so easy to be quenched. And not
it is a question asked of many blind people. Would you choose to get your sight back?
The research says that there's been 20 documented cases in history of people getting vision after long-term blindness. Most of those people have had a very difficult time. The famous case is a guy named Sidney Bradford in the UK, and he died maybe 2 years after he got his vision back, and his life was reasonably good before he got vision, and afterwards he just got confused and lost his job and had a terrible time.
That sounds sort of counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It is. I've had people, when I've given speeches, they say, "You're crazy. That cannot be. That's not true." But it's a very complicated situation to get your vision back psychologically after not having any. And when you have expectations that getting vision is going to solve your life, it's going to take care of transportation, it's going to help your relationship, it's going to get you a job, and then those things don't happen, then you come crashing down with this huge disappointment.
Technology now has the potential to transform blind people's lives. Your mobile phone can tell you the color of your shirt, as well as map your route before you leave home, and also talk you through it. Medical advancements in sight loss prevention and restoration will also be game changers. But what effect could it have on blind people's sense of identity?
I'm all for the cutting edge, the bleeding edge of technology, and that in terms of medical advancement. But at the same time, we want to be learning Braille, we want to be learning how to use a cane and all of those techniques, because when you do get vision, the thing that's really helped me and that's kept me from being stressed is that I can always fall back on my blindness skills. And if I were a person who'd lost my vision and didn't have those skills and was waiting around for some medical miracle, then once I got some vision, I would be very ill-equipped to deal with the fact that it's low vision and not perfect vision.
Maybe we will not be using the white cane anymore. Maybe the roads will be accessible to us. Maybe we'll be driving. Maybe we'll be limitless. I don't know, but I really do think that in the next 20 years, the issues that we are having here as dependents or relying on other persons will be greatly reduced. Maybe the stereotype will reduce.
Hello, I'm Wesley Stevenson, and this is More or Less on the BBC World Service. Donald Trump's victory in the US elections last year was bad news for many Mexican companies. When the bell rang to signal the opening of the New York Stock Exchange on November the 9th, shares in Mexican firms started going south. If Donald Trump followed through on his promise to build a wall and renegotiate the North America Free Trade Agreement, things were going to be tough for these companies. Since then, some shares have recovered, but most have stayed well below their pre-election highs. There's a notable exception, though, a Mexican firm called Cemex, or CEMEX as some people call it. Its shares have reached their highest level since the financial crisis.
We do have a big rally for the building materials companies, especially CEMEX. This is the second largest cement company in the world, interestingly based out of Mexico, but really rallying on the positive.
Cement is, of course, a key ingredient in concrete, and if you were building, say, a great big wall, perhaps, you're going to need tons of the stuff, and you can't just get it from anywhere.
There are American producers in the region as well, but because cement and concrete is so heavy, who supplies a given market depends very much on who has depots and dumps in that particular vicinity. And all along the Mexican-American border, you have a mixture of American and Mexican companies, with Cemex being the leading company in North America as a whole.
Adam Tooze is a professor of modern history at Columbia University in New York, and he writes about globalization. He started looking at Cemex when he realized if the US wanted to build a wall, they would be the most likely firm to supply the concrete.
Cemex is one of the success stories of the modern Mexican economy. When we think of Mexico, we maybe think of tacos, we think of oil, but Mexico is a booming, emerging market economy, and as a developing society with a rapidly growing population, it has a big construction sector, and Cemex has emerged since the 1980s. They're a personally owned company that grew rapidly through acquisitions, in part driven by earlier bursts of American protectionism. So tariffs were put on imported Mexican cement and concrete already in the late 1980s, and Cemex got round this by buying its way, first of all, into neighboring Latin American markets, and then into North America, into the United States itself. And from the early 2000s, Cemex was a pioneering company in the application of tech to the construction industry, generating a very novel set of concrete mixers that drive around the building sites of major cities and are available on call, if you like. So rather than having a point-to-point facility where the material is moved on demand from a dump, a depot, to a particular building site, you simply calculate how much might be needed in the city on any given day, and you put that much in motion around town, and then you can call for it to be delivered in a much more efficient manner.
So how much of it might they need to build a wall? Well, calculations vary. It depends on how high you might want it, how wide, how long. It's unlikely to need to go the whole length of the border. Donald Trump has suggested they need to cover around half the distance, that's 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometers. Build it 50 feet high and a foot wide with an extra 10 feet under the ground to prevent tunneling. You might need 316 million cubic feet of concrete. Make it just 20 feet high with 5 feet under the ground to stop tunneling, and it would be 132 million cubic feet. Either way, this is going to be a massive project. But in context, though, it's tiny. Cement is one of the vital ingredients of concrete. But this project will only account for around 2 to 3% of the United States' annual consumption. And this is dwarfed by the real big boy of concrete use, that's China.
China has poured more concrete in the 3 years after 2008 than the United States poured during the entire 20th century.
An astonishing fact, if it's true. Now, if you've not been listening to 50 Things That Made the Modern Economy on the World Service, then you should. It's presented by the regular presenter of More or Less, Tim Harford. And this mind-blowing claim appeared in his programme about concrete. But our listeners, well, they're a cynical lot, and David got in touch via moreorless@bbc.co.uk to say,
"What? Surely not. But what temerity on my part to question anything numerical said by the fastidious Tim, even if he is only reading a script written by somebody else. How dare I?"
How dare you indeed, David, but perhaps this is my opportunity, the one I've been waiting for all these years. Maybe this is my chance to bring the big man down. So let's look at his sources. Now, Tim got the claim from a book by the historian Václav Smil. Smil's claim is slightly different in that he's talking about cement rather than concrete. A glimmer of hope, perhaps? Sadly not. As I found, the vast majority of cement is used to make concrete, so it's a pretty good proxy. Smil got his figure from work by a man called Hendrik van Os at the United States Geological Survey. So I contacted him and asked if China really had used more cement in the 3 years between 2008 and 2011 than the US had done in the whole of the 20th century.
Let's see, let me just check on that. The U.S. from, say, 1900 to 1999, we produced 4.2 billion tons. So 08, 09, 2010, China produced 4.8 billion tons.
Well, that blows my opportunity to bring Tim down. But if you thought that was mind-blowing, wait till you hear the most recent figures.
If we bring that up to date now, say 2014 to 2016, China has produced 7.2 billion tons.
In the last 3 years, China hasn't used just a bit more. It's used 1.5 times more cement than the US did in the whole of the 20th century. If you look at the US and China side by side on a graph, the US steadily increases its use over the 20th century. China's use since the 1950s has been exponential.
What's interesting about China, you go back to, say, the 1950s, they were producing about 2 million tons a year. So now they're more than 1,000-fold higher, whereas we were producing perhaps 60 million or so tons at that time. And we've gone up maybe 50%.
But where do these figures come from? Well, actually, they're the official figures from the Chinese government, so caution may be advised. But Hendrik thinks that even if they're out, it'll only be by a fraction of a percentage point and wouldn't make much difference to the comparison with the US. And he says it makes sense when you compare the US with China in other ways.
One is their population is vastly larger. They are attempting to adopt a much more consumer-driven lifestyle, facing a great deal of urbanization, and they're basically not building small towns, they're building Manhattans everywhere. They're achieving in a few decades what we achieved in a century, plus the fact that they have a much higher population. So they are well in excess of 1 ton per person per capita consumption, whereas the U.S. is about a quarter of that.
And putting the war with Mexico into context, that will use maybe 2.5 million tons of cement. The Three Gorges Dam in China, which was finished in 2006, that used 5 times that amount. China's use does seem to have peaked, though. There's been a slight drop since 2014, and Hendrik expects the use to plateau. So in construction terms, it may be big, but Trump's wall is a mere footnote compared to the construction going on in China.
To increase defense spending and work toward contributing at least 2% of GDP.
Well, Mrs. Merkel said the two leaders had been discussing the issues of immigration and how to deal with refugees.
unsere Außengrenzen schützen müssen.
We have to protect our external borders because and there we have to work on the basis of mutual interest with our neighbors. Migration, immigration, integration has to be worked on. Obviously, traffickers have to be stopped. Migration, integration has to be worked on. Obviously, traffickers have to be stopped. But this has to be done by looking at the refugees as well, giving them opportunities to shape their own lives where they are, help countries who right now are not in an ability to do so, sometimes because they have civil war. I think that's the right way of going about it, and this is obviously what we have an exchange of views about.
Well, there we are. That's the two leaders speaking today.
Parking mode disabled.
The last couple of years, candidate Trump made it clear what he thought of Angela Merkel's decision to welcome so many refugees.
So I used to be a fan of Merkel. I used to think she was terrific, a big leader, a great leader. I think what she did to Germany is a disgrace. And they walked all through Europe to get to Germany. Germany is a behemoth, an economic behemoth. It's being destroyed by what Merkel has done there. What she has done to Germany. I have friends from Germany. They're leaving Germany. And I don't know, maybe she got carried away with herself. I don't know. Like tremendous crime.
Given that, there was some some thinking these talks could go pretty badly today, and Mrs. Merkel did say in the news conference, it's better to talk to each other rather than about each other. Dr. Constance Stelzen-Müller is a German political scientist, senior fellow at the Brookings Institution in Washington. What did she make of the news conference?
I think on the whole it went remarkably well. I think that there were no obvious mishaps. The awkward moment at the Oval Office presser where Trump clearly didn't hear that Angela Merkel was asking him whether he wanted to do a handshake for photographers, I think was revised by a sort of very deliberate handshake at the end. And I think there were a lot of really important points of agreement that Angela Merkel, I think you might say, managed to extract from her host.
So why don't you just give us a couple of those then? What did she get out of it?
I think she got out of her visit a number of things. One, on, I think, atmospherics and style, a president who was cordial, who was on message, on script, not hostile, didn't say anything nasty about NATO, the EU, or Germany, or in fact his guest, and who said he was willing to engage with Germany on what he called free and fair trade, acknowledged the superior handiwork of German trade negotiators. He said he thought they had done better than the American ones, better prepared, acknowledged German excellence in vocational training, and recognized that Germany is doing its bit to come up to its 2% defense spending promise, although interestingly he said they're at least 2%. So clearly he thinks there's room at the top.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sort of line came out of the White House saying he'd pressed her very hard on that, and then he did sort of make some quite pointed remarks in his comments at the news conference, didn't he? It didn't sound like he's totally satisfied.
Well, he did also thank her for more than 50 German deaths in Afghanistan. I mean, look, for the Germans to pay 2% of their defense budget, given Germany's growth rate, would mean doubling the defense budget in a couple of years. That is actually a fairly big ask, and I think that the American side, it seems to me, understands that's not something you can do in 2-3 years.
So you're saying it's all positive pretty much on all sides. Were there any issues you thought might go worse?
I think we all thought every issue could go worse. After the really very critical remarks that the president made as candidate on the campaign trail about Germany, the country, about Angela Merkel, the Chancellor, her policies on immigration in particular, the handling of refugees, about Germany's defense budget, and certainly the very hostile remarks coming out of the president's advisor circle on the EU. I think German diplomats and certainly German bystanders like me could have imagined it any number of ways in which this meeting could have gone badly south. And so, yes, there is an element of relief, I think, in seeing that it didn't. But I think even without those possibly quite negative expectations, I think this looked, at least on the surface of things, like a meeting that had gone quite well. I think one would have to note that the press conference started rather later than announced. I think more than about 40 minutes late. Perhaps they had some things that they needed to refine or differences to gloss over, and hopefully we'll find about that shortly.
And that was Dr. Constance Stelzenmuller there. Well, President Trump's first budget has earmarked more than $4 billion for the wall with Mexico. It's a big outlay. It's going to be used to provide hundreds of border officers, prosecutors and judges to help with the detention and removal of illegal migrants. Shaima Khalil has been down to the Texan border town of Del Rio, where there is just a narrow river between the two countries, and she spoke to John Atvinson, first of all, a Border Patrol agent, who told her what it's like trying to control that border.
If they put somebody on that hill right there, they can be across the river in a matter of 3 minutes and be up here. So we're standing on the banks of the Rio Grande River. We're maybe 100 yards from Mexico, and the river itself is maybe 40 yards across. It's pretty green right now. We've had a lot of rain, and as you'll see, there's what's called carrizo cane on the other side. You have to picture a really tall corn stalk without the corn, and it forms a wall, and they can either hide behind it or within it until we pass, and then they carry on.
Now, given the proximity of this, and given how close it is literally the same area with a river running through it. How difficult is your job in controlling the movement of people coming in?
It is very difficult. It doesn't take much for them to be able to get across the river, especially in this area where there are spots literally they can walk across. The water may not even get up to your knees in some spots. It takes nothing for them to get across, and they can see us from here. As you can see, they have the high ground. They have bluffs on their side, on the Mexican side of the river, so they can see us.
So you can literally be standing on one of the hills there and looking at us right now.
Absolutely, and there probably is somebody watching us right now wondering what we're doing over here, but that's just this area. So they know where we are, they know what we're doing. We sometimes joke that they have better intel than us, but they can see us, and part of the issue that you've been seeing in the news is we're undermanned, which is absolutely true. That affects this area, that affects everywhere along the border.
Tell me about morale in generally in the past 3 months with the Trump presidency, with the rhetoric about border control. How are you guys taking it?
The day after the election, I saw a lot of smiles at work, more smiles than I've seen in a long time. And that has to do with we're optimistic that we're going to be able to get back into our job again. Frankly, he's the first president in a long time who's taken border security seriously. And I think it's been something that's been lacking for many years.
I'm wondering if we can go and speak to some of the residents about their experiences, because it's literally, if we look at that house over here, their backyard is the river, which then goes into Mexico.
Right. Most of the time they're crossing, it's through somebody's property.
How you doing?
hanging in there.
I'm Shaima. I'm from the BBC.
You guys want to come in? Dog's already ate. Come on in, guys.
Thank you.
Right here, my dear. One time, I was out here on my porch over there, and I seen this guy walking across the yard here. And about 10 minutes later, another person walking across. And I yelled at them, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And they don't answer nothing. They just keep going. You know, they're not afraid. Now that my brother is here, he takes a shotgun and he'll shoot 3 or 4 times when we see people over there just waiting to cross.
So what kind of help do you need around here?
Protection. We need more BP.
Border Patrol?
Border Patrol, yes ma'am. Border Patrol, we need more sheriffs, deputies. And I know they can't protect us constantly, but give us something. My wife is in a wheelchair. Me, I gotta take a chair and sit out there with my BB gun. If my brother's not here with his shotgun, that's all I got. And my knife.
So you think America should have a wall?
Yes, I do.
Wait, so you want a wall? So you want a wall what? On this bank of the river, just over there, blocking that hill?
I don't need the view anymore. I don't need it. I need protection.
So hang on. So you don't mind a big, huge wall just outside?
Not at all.
Just in your backyard?
Not at all. I wouldn't mind it one bit because I don't care about the view. What I care is about protection. I don't want to see people coming in the yard whenever they feel like it. And if I don't bolt something down, it's gone.
So what do you say to people who are saying that we don't need walls, that the wall is a bad idea, that it's just not going to solve the problem?
That's a simple answer. You don't live here. If you did, they would know how hard it is to protect your people. They would know how hard it is to protect your people. If I could stay up all night long, it'd be different. But we all gotta sleep. So, what do? You gotta wait till you hear something, till you hear somebody ripping you off and then come out with your knife?
If you have a message for President Trump, what would it be? What would you like to tell President Trump?
Build the wall. Build that wall. The protection. That's what we need.
So there we are, a very clear view from resident Andres Montemayor, and before him from border agent John Atkinson. That report from Shaima Khalil down on the Mexican-US border in the town of Del Rio. Coming up later in the programme, the mysterious attack on a boat carrying Somali refugees off the coast of Yemen, which has killed at least 40 people.
It's very confusing, very hard to know, but we know that around 3 a.m. this morning, their boat came across some naval vessels. Clearly they came under attack. It's a real tragedy.
I will be asking who was responsible for that attack on a boat that was actually leaving Yemen at the time. Headlines: President Trump has told the German Chancellor Angela Merkel there should be a fairer trading relationship between their two countries. He also suggested both he and Mrs. Merkel had been spied on by former President Obama. And British researchers say a new anti-cholesterol drug can sharply reduce the risk of heart disease. We'll also report today that the Nobel Prize-winning poet Derek Walcott has died at the age of 87. We'll be covering that later in the programme. You're listening to NewsHour and to Europe Now, and from the end of this month, all asylum seekers in Hungary will be automatically detained in container camps on the border with Serbia. It's part of a Hungarian government policy to close all refugee facilities in the country and reinforce the southern border fence. The UN Refugee Agency, the UNHCR, and the human rights groups have accused the government of breaking international and European law. Nick Thorpe sent this report.
Asylum seekers at the detention centre at Békéscsaba in southern Hungary. They're locked up here for 6 months while their applications are considered. When they saw journalists outside, many came to the barred windows, shouting the names of their countries and calling for help.
We are not criminals. We are not terrorists. We are refugees. There is no human rights here. This is not camp. It's a prison. It's a prison. They are treating us like as animals.
Hungary already has a reputation as a country which doesn't take kindly to migrants and refugees, but the rules just got tougher still. This is the Hungarian-Serbian border at Ruske. The machines you can hear are maneuvering dozens of blue and white containers into place in a razor wire enclosure right next to the fence. From now on, all asylum seekers in Hungary, new arrivals, and the 500 already in the country will be concentrated in container camps like this one. Shandor is a local building contractor in charge of constructing the camp.
These are new containers with showers, toilets, air conditioning, and a small kitchen, like a small flat. Proper 21st century living conditions.
But it's not the amenities on offer which offend the UNHCR and human rights groups. It's the fact that Hungary will detain all asylum seekers, including families with children and unaccompanied teenagers, while their applications are considered. The government spokesman, Zoltán Kovács, defends the move.
They are not detained because they are free to leave if they change their mind and they would like to go back. You know, what we would like to achieve is that they comply with the rules. So we are going to tighten the rules applying according or in line with the European regulations, and we're not going to provide them the freedom of movement or freedom to move around the country because they misuse that system.
You're constantly tightening the rules, and so in a way you're testing the international rules, aren't you?
No, we are trying to adjust the existing legal framework and environment to reality on the ground.
But Hungary has already run into trouble. This week, the European Court of Human Rights ruled that, in an earlier case, Hungary unlawfully detained asylum seekers in just such a container camp. That's not a ruling which will carry much weight with Hungary's firebrand Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. Here's an excerpt from his recent speech to border guard recruits.
We are under siege. The flood of migrants has only slowed, but it's not over. We have one time between two big waves to strengthen our lines of defense.
Back at the detention facility in Békéscsaba, a hunger strike begun earlier this week is over. Hungary has one of the lowest approval rates of asylum, between 10 and 15%. The government has decided that the vast majority of those who enter Hungary are illegal economic migrants, not genuine refugees from war or persecution, and it wants to deter them in future from even trying.
And on the Hungarian-Serbian border, that was Nick Thorpe. Exciting news. A new drug can prevent heart attacks and strokes by cutting bad cholesterol by unprecedented amounts. Peter Seber is professor at Imperial College, London University.
It's very exciting. It's probably the most exciting study that's been done on lowering cholesterol for the last 25 years.
Right, so just talk us through why cholesterol is such bad news.
Well, for 40 or 50 years, it's been very, very clear that there are major risk factors for causing heart disease and stroke. And along with smoking and blood pressure, diet, and particularly cholesterol is really, really important. And there really is sort of incontrovertible evidence that the higher the cholesterol, the greater the risk. And what we've seen with the big trials of statins over the years is if you lower cholesterol, then people will experience enormous benefits. But what we've got now is a new drug that is even more effective than statins, that lowers the dangerous form of cholesterol by about 60%. And what we've shown in this new trial, which is the first big new trial of this new class of drugs, is that it reduces the risk of stroke and heart attack further by around 20%. And that's a massive advantage.
Yeah, so statins have been good, but this will be better.
Statins have been very, very good, and they will continue to be used widely. In our particular study, we added the new drug on top of statins, and we showed an additional benefit.
Is this one of these drugs where one company's developed it, will get the patent and can charge whatever it likes for it?
No, probably not, because there are at least two companies, and there were three that are developing these drugs. They will be expensive until such time as their patent runs out, but the charge to the NHS is actually substantially lower than most people think. And the big question that most of us are asking is the use of these drugs going to be cost effective? And the likelihood is that the answer is going to be yes.
Can you just help us with how, we're broadcasting internationally here. If obviously it's a massive problem in India, for example, and many other countries outside of Europe and the United States. How long does it take for drugs like this, when they're developed, to feed through the whole international system?
Well, I mean, these drugs are available on a worldwide basis now. The first of these drugs, Evolocumab, and another one, Alirocumab, were available about a year ago. They have been made available throughout the world, and so assuming that the healthcare systems can afford to pay for them, then they can be used. Now, the price of these drugs is very high, as indeed are all new drugs when they're first introduced, but that price will come down. And as I've said earlier on, in the UK, the price is such that, there will be real benefit, cost-effective benefit if these drugs are used in people who are at high risk.
Right, because it'll save money, because it'll prevent a lot of very sort of expensive illness.
Absolutely, the cost of keeping in people in hospital with, with heart attacks and debilitating strokes is absolutely enormous. And if you can prevent those with new medications, then that's a real advance.
Will this lengthen people's lives? It probably will.
Yeah, in the study that we have just completed, the study was completed after only 2 years. So we showed that the heart attack rates were reduced, stroke rates were reduced. The death rates were not. But as we've known from earlier studies, you need to treat people for more than 2 years to see an advantage on death rates. But I'm pretty confident that, had the trial gone on longer, we would see reductions in mortality.
So there we are, some good news, and that was from Peter Sever there, Professor at the National Heart and Lung Institute at Imperial College. That's all part of London University. You're listening to the World Service of the BBC.
You're listening to the BBC World Service. The news is in a couple of minutes, but first, music.
I'm Rita Ray, and last night, Global Beats was at the Sauti za Busara Music Festival in Zanzibar. You can hear live stage performances at bbcworldservice.com/BBC Music. And for this month's show, we'll have exclusive acoustic performances recorded at the festival. Music from Guinea-Bissau, Somaliland, Cameroon, and Malawi.
Global Beats, Saturday at 14 and Sunday at 20 GMT.
Coming up on NewsHour over the next 30 minutes, we've got Carrie Gracie, our China editor, who's managed to get herself to Xinjiang in western China. Very difficult place to get to. Her report is coming up. And we've also got Barbara Platt-Usher, who each week gives us a roundup of what's been going on in the Trump administration. So her take on the last 7 days in Washington just before the end of the programme. First of all, we'll have some news.
BBC News with Kathy Clugston. In his first meeting with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, President Trump has stressed that he's not an isolationist,
but a free trader seeking fair deals to bring jobs back to America. Mrs. Merkel said globalization could bring mutual benefits and new jobs, and hoped he would come back to the TTIP talks to secure a trade deal with the European Union. Correspondents say the two showed courtesy to each other, but little chemistry. Mr. Trump also said the White House had not accused Britain of spying on him at the instigation of the Obama administration. It had only relayed news reports to that effect. Britain has called the allegations utterly ridiculous. The UN Refugee Agency has said it's appalled by the deaths of dozens of Somali refugees whose boat was attacked off Yemen's Red Sea coast. It's still not clear who is behind the attack, but reports say the vessel was fired at from the air. Human rights groups say police have demolished the houses of more than 4,000 people at a waterfront community in the Nigerian city of Lagos. They argue the authorities were acting in violation of a court order which said they should go into mediation with the community. Scientists in Britain say a new anti-cholesterol drug can drastically reduce the risk of heart disease. It targets a protein in the liver to make the organ more effective at clearing the type of cholesterol which blocks arteries. Brazilian police have carried out raids at the offices of some of the country's biggest meat-packing companies, accusing them of selling rotten meat for many years. Dozens of arrest warrants have been issued. Investigators say the companies bribed officials to get government certificates for their products. One of the 20th century's great masters of the English language, the Nobel laureate poet Derek Walcott, has died in his homeland of St. Lucia. He was 87. Awarding the Nobel Prize in '92, the Swedish Academy called him the great poet of West Indian culture. BBC News.
We'll be off to China in a moment, but first business, and the US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is on his way to China too, with the possibility of a trade war between the world's two biggest economies in the air. Any move by Washington to increase taxes on imports into the United States to try to protect US jobs would almost certainly bring retaliation. So what's going on? What's the latest on all of this? From Shanghai, Robin Brandt reports.
Hi. 草莓啊.
Strawberries.
You like strawberries? Yeah. Yes. Can try?
Of course you can.
Getting lunchtime shoppers to stop and talk is challenging sometimes. But with a plate of red ripe strawberries, it was easy.
What kind of tricks?
No, it's not a trick. Here on BBC, no tricks. It wasn't tricks, but trade I wanted to talk about, because the fresh, sweet strawberry may be the next weapon in a trans-Pacific trade war. China's ever-expanding rich middle class love fresh fruit. So much so that US firms like Driscoll's have set up here to grow and sell in China. Under the Muzak in high-end supermarkets like this, they have a range of homegrown berries on offer. But it also reckons there's a place for its California strawberries. So starting next month, they'll be flown in and they'll be pricey.
14%.
Part of the reason for that is the import duty. China adds 14% to fresh strawberries from the US.
Certainly we would be concerned from the standpoint of how our product may be affected by any type of trade issues between our two countries.
The prospect of a hike anytime soon is not what Jay Chun from the fruit firm wants.
And if those prices are going to be affected by things that we can't control, such as tariff duties and others, as long as we maintain that premium quality and that product offering to the consumer, there'll be a market out there for those that be interested in buying that.
It's not just the China ambitions of fresh fruit that could be at stake. Ford could face a bump in the road for one of its most iconic brands. That's me being driven round in the center of Shanghai inside a massive Made in America Lincoln Navigator. It's been a bit of a fading brand in the Ford portfolio, although recently sales have ticked up in the States. But if China, these drivers here, don't embrace Lincoln, then it could be the end of the road for the cars that have carried presidents. This giant SUV is made in Kentucky, then it's shipped to China, and it costs more than twice as much here. Part of the reason?
25%.
The import duty is 25%. On the prospect of an increase, Lincoln's parent company Ford told the BBC it would evaluate the situation should the need arise, but it would not comment on speculation.
I don't think firms expect a trade war.
Kenneth Jarrett is from the American Chamber of Commerce here in Shanghai.
So I believe that most American companies feel that the two leaders of the two governments
appreciate that the stakes are too high, so the expectation of a trade war was quite low, if not non-existent.
And there we are, that was Kenneth Jarrett ending that report from Shanghai by Robin Brandt. You're listening to NewsHour, and China has said Islamist separatists are the greatest threat to its stability. At the session of the annual parliament that ended on Wednesday, President Xi Jinping promised what he called a Great Wall of Iron, another wall, to safeguard China's vast western region of Xinjiang, which borders Afghanistan and Pakistan. Xinjiang is home to 10 million people from the Uyghur community, most are Muslim, and the government worries they're vulnerable to jihadi messaging. Over recent years, hundreds of people have been killed in Xinjiang, mostly in attacks on government targets and in confrontations between Uyghurs and the police. Widespread intimidation makes reporting from there very difficult, but our China editor Carrie Gracie got exclusive access to Pishan County. It's in the south of Xinjiang, and the government thinks it's the hotbed of terrorism.
The warnings are in Uyghur, repeated in Chinese. Cooperate with security staff, hand over your knives and your lighters. There's a security check at every government office, every shop, every restaurant. Armed police in stab vests and helmets. This is Xinjiang, once the fabled Silk Road between East and West, now the front line in China's war on terror. A sea of khaki uniforms and armoured personnel carriers, China is pouring in troops. They're pledging their lives to an all-out offensive. They call it a Great Wall of Iron. So-called Islamic State posted this video of Uyghur fighters training in Iraq, promising rivers of blood in China's heartland. Beijing fears they'll come home to kill, so it's making it hard for other young Uyghurs to leave. We've flown 2,000 miles and driven across southern Xinjiang to Pishan, a town where 5 Han Chinese killed on the street last month. Today there are children kicking the ball, ancient farmers on donkey carts, and in the local bazaar, a man grinding herbs, a baker selling flatbread, a butcher hanging a lamb carcass. And yes, plenty of security. One shopper in a red headscarf tells me that's reassuring. You don't need to be afraid. This place is full of police. You can feel safe. It's a lot better than before.
Recent attacks here have all been local and low-tech. A handful of young farmers armed only with knives. They show no sign of delivering the kind of large-scale atrocity that would explain the government's call for an all-out offensive.
Bearded old men shuffle out of the local mosque under the watchful eye of an armed SWAT team. Beijing's fear of jihad is putting religion under pressure. No young people are allowed into the mosque, and families are not allowed to pray together at home either. Soon we come under suspicion. This is me explaining to police why we're here. In fact, we're about to spend 3.5 hours in police custody. But for Uyghurs, it's so much worse. They can simply disappear. Foreign critics warn this repression is the recruiting sergeant for terror. But China vows it will triumph. And until then, every Uyghur is suspect.
And that report from Carrie Gracie. More than 40 people have been killed after a boat carrying Somali refugees was targeted in a helicopter attack off the coast of Yemen. And Mohammed Ali of the BBC in Nairobi is covering this. What happened?
a boat that was carrying Somali refugees from Yemen was attacked yesterday. There are two versions of the story of how it was attacked. Some sources are telling us that it was a helicopter gun ship that attacked from the air, while other sources are saying it was a ground missile that hit the boat. And some sources within the Coast Guard in Yemen are saying that the refugees were carrying refugee identity cards issued to them by UNHCR.
So can you tell us who has helicopter gunships and who has artillery in that area?
As we know right now, the area is called Bab al-Mandab. It's a strait, a very important strait along the Red Sea. And the coalition forces led by Saudi Arabia use gunships, and they also control Yemen's airspace. Also, on the other hand, the rebel group, the Houthi rebel group that's fighting the coalition and the Yemen forces do have ground missiles. So it could be either, but as of now, I was speaking to a UN official, a Somali UN official on the ground in Sana'a, who's trying to help people get medical support, and he was emphatic that the reports they received, it was an airstrike, and he says it's only the Saudi-led coalition that uses helicopters or air support in the fight against the Houthis.
So that was Mohammed Ali of the BBC, and Leonard Doyle is Director of Communications at the International Organization of Migration.
There's a large number, perhaps 250,000 Somali refugees and others and migrants who are currently in Yemen. And, they're there because they've traditionally gone through Yemen, or they've worked in Yemen. And they had decided, about 160 had decided that they should return to Somalia on their own because of the deteriorating security situation. And they rented a ferry boat belonging to a Somalian trader, and they paid, and we know the rest.
So why would this boat have been targeted?
It's probably partly because of lack of coordination. Perhaps the various fighting parties weren't aware that it was on that trajectory, that it was a strictly civilian operation.
And is there an issue of human shields? People moving stuff around on boats with refugees protecting those materials. Does that happen off this coast?
I've never heard of that before. Think of the direction they're going in. They're leaving, so they're heading home. So they're going the wrong direction if that was the accusation.
What have you got on the circumstances of the attack and whether it was helicopters or artillery or what?
It's very confusing, very hard to know, but we know that around 3 a.m. this morning, their boat came across some naval vessels. Whether it was a helicopter or whether it was from a boat, it seems to be unclear, but nonetheless, they came under attack. It's a real tragedy. You have 76 males and 15 female survivors. We've been there helping them with humanitarian assistance.
Yeah, but these are people who fled war in Somalia, got to Yemen, hit another war, tried to get back home, and never made it.
It's terrible, and as you are well aware, that this circular journey just continues.
And that was Leonard Doyle from the International Organization of Migration. He was speaking from Geneva. The Nobel Prize-winning poet and playwright Derek Walcott has died in his homeland of St. Lucia. He was 87. He first gained international attention back in the 60s.
The BBC World Service are available as podcasts. You can listen whenever or wherever it suits you. Podcasts from the BBC World Service. To find out more, go to bbcworldservice.com/podcasts. And in an hour, News Hour Extra with Owen Bennett-Jones.
This week we're looking at the Brexit negotiations as the UK prepares to leave the European Union. Those who want to leave say everything's going to be fine. Those who want to remain saying it's all going to go wrong. We'll try and get some clarity on the matter. Stay with us for that. But next, it's the newsroom.
This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
BBC World Service, it's 22 hours GMT. This is Oliver Conway with the newsroom. President Trump and the German Chancellor Angela Merkel agreed to disagree over migrant policy at their meeting at the White House.
Immigration is a privilege, not a right.
And policy at their meeting at the White House.
Immigration is a privilege, not a right. And the safety of our citizens must always come first.
this has to be done by looking at the refugees as well, giving them opportunities to shape their own lives where they are. I think that's the right way of going about it.
But Mr. Trump jokes they do have one thing in common, being wiretapped by the Obama administration. Also on the newsroom. But Mr. Trump jokes they do have one thing in common, being wiretapped by the Obama administration. Also on the newsroom, British researchers say a new anti-cholesterol drug can sharply reduce the risk of heart disease. And later.
The fishermen rowing...
Parking mode disabled. At end of the road, turn right, onto Fielding Car Ranch Road.
Poet and Nobel laureate Derek Walcott has died at the age of 87. First is Kathy.
Hello, this is Kathy Clugston with the BBC News. Donald Trump has repeated his assertion that he was wiretapped by President Obama's administration. Speaking in Washington at a joint news conference with the visiting German Chancellor Angela Merkel, he remarked that at least she and he had shared that experience.
As far as wiretapping, I guess, by this past administration, at least we have something in common, perhaps.
Mr. Trump was referring to an acknowledgement in 2015 that the phones of the German Chancellor had been tapped. However, that operation had been authorized before the Obama presidency. During their meeting, President Trump stressed to Mrs. Merkel that he was not an isolationist, but a free trader seeking fair deals to bring jobs back to America. At their news conference, he said past agreements had led to increased unemployment in the US. Mrs. Merkel said globalization could bring mutual benefits and new jobs. Andrew Walker reports.
President Trump said millions of hard-working Americans have been left behind by international commerce. He said the US has been treated very unfairly by many countries, and he pointed to the American trade deficit. The US exports less than it imports. One of the largest bilateral imbalances is with Germany. Mr. Trump said that in future he expected the US to do fantastically well in trade with Germany, though he did not spell out what he meant. Chancellor Merkel said she hoped the US and the European Union could resume talks on removing barriers to bilateral trade.
The US Department of Justice has filed a notice of appeal against a decision by a federal judge in Maryland to strike down parts of President Trump's revised travel ban just hours before it was due to have taken effect. The president has said he'll take his case for the ban on the grounds of national security to the Supreme Court. His latest executive order on the issue would have barred entry to the United States to refugees and people from 6 mainly Muslim countries. Human rights groups say police have demolished the houses of more than 4,000 people at a waterfront community in the Nigerian city of Lagos. They argue the authorities were acting in violation of a court order. Ijeoma Ndukwe reports from Lagos.
Community members clashed with police early Friday morning after bulldozers appeared on the fishing settlement. According to activists on the site, nearly 4,700 people have been rendered homeless. This latest demolition is said to be in violation of a court order.
Traffic jam ahead.
Which said that Lagos state government, who want to clear their illegal settlement, should go into mediation with the community. An eyewitness told the BBC that tear gas and live bullets were fired after residents formed a human chain to stop the houses from being destroyed.
World News from the BBC. United Nations experts say that South Sudan's government is spending at least half its budget on security and weapons, while 100,000 people are dying of starvation caused mainly by military operations. Famine was declared in parts of South Sudan last month, and the UN has warned that it could spread to other parts of the country. The panel of experts is calling on the UN Security Council to impose an arms embargo. The UN Refugee Agency has said it's appalled by the deaths of dozens of Somali refugees whose boat was attacked off Yemen's Red Sea coast. More than 40 bodies have been recovered and survivors have been taken to detention centres. It's still not clear who was behind the attack. Coast guards in the port of Hodeidah said the vessel was travelling to Sudan. Mohammed Ali has more details.
There are two versions of the story of how it was attacked. Some sources are telling us that it was a helicopter gun ship that attacked from the air, while other sources are saying it was a ground missile that hit the boat. And some sources within the Coast Guard in Yemen are saying that the refugees were carrying refugee identity cards issued to them by UNHCR.
Brazilian police have carried out raids at the offices of some of the country's biggest meatpacking companies, accusing them of selling rotten meat on the domestic market and abroad for many years. Dozens of arrest warrants have been issued across the country. Investigators say the companies JBS and BRF bribed health inspectors and other officials to get government certificates for their products. One of the 20th century's great masters of the English language, the Nobel laureate Derek Walcott, has died in his homeland of St. Lucia. He was 87. So Derek first gained international attention in the 1960s with poems that explored the history and culture of St. Lucia and the wider Caribbean. The Swedish Academy called him the great poet of West Indian culture. BBC News.
We'll hear more on Derek Walcott a little later in the programme. This is the newsroom from the BBC World Service with Oliver Conway. It was the most anticipated meeting yet for President Donald Trump, and many also say the most important, given that he and his visitor, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, are arguably the most powerful leaders in the Western world. At a news conference, which was probably best described as businesslike rather than warm, the two stressed their agreement on a number of issues: NATO, Afghanistan and Ukraine. But they didn't see eye to eye on trade and immigration.
We also recognize that immigration security is national security. We must protect our citizens from those who seek to spread terrorism, extremism, and violence inside our borders. Immigration is a privilege, not a right, and the safety of our citizens must always come first, without question.
And contrast that with Mrs. Merkel's view.
Globalization ought to be shaped in an open-minded way, but also in a very fair way. Freedom of movement within the European Union, for example, is a very important element of our economic progress, of peace. We have to protect our external borders because, and there we have to work on the basis of mutual interest with our neighbors. Migration, immigration, integration has to be worked on. Obviously, traffickers have to be stopped, but this has to be done by looking at the refugees as well, giving them opportunities to shape their own lives where they are. I think that's the right way of going about it, and this is obviously what we have an exchange of views about.
Our correspondent Barbara Platt-Usher was at the White House during the meeting.
It doesn't seem to have been the warmest of meetings. The body language was quite stiff, I would say, if not downright awkward. Even before the press conference, when they had their photo spray, it was very obvious Mr. Trump didn't shake Mrs. Merkel's hand in quite a noticeable way. So that left, I think, us all wondering just how well they would get on. The press conference, it was quite measured. Obviously, there wasn't a great deal of charisma between the two, but I think they tried to give each other ground where they could. So, for example, Mr. Trump repeated his statement that members of NATO needed to pay their fair share, but he did acknowledge ways in which Germany had moved on that, and he said he was committed to NATO. I think the Germans were quite reassured by his statement on Ukraine. He acknowledged the importance of the Minsk process run by Germany and France, reassuring them that he wasn't going to go off on his own and try to make a deal with President Vladimir Putin.
Traffic jam ahead.
Donald Trump pops up and says they did both have one thing in common, in that they might have both been wiretapped by President Obama's administration.
As far as wiretapping, I guess, by this past administration, at least we have something in common, perhaps. And just to finish your question, we said nothing. All we did was quote a certain very talented legal mind who was the one responsible for saying that on television.
Donald Trump there referring to those claims that British intelligence had been used to eavesdrop on him in Trump Tower, making a joke of it, Barbara, but he just can't seem to get away from this.
No, he can't. And especially because he keeps insisting that it happened without offering evidence. I mean, that's really the crux of it. What you heard him there saying was he was distancing himself from this report that his spokesperson had quoted, that the British spy agency GCHQ had been the one that Mr. Obama kind of outsourced the spying to, which of course the British angrily rejected. So he was distancing himself from that, saying, no, we were only quoting a report, but he didn't apologize for it. that has become more and more of an issue as we're building to Monday, when the House Intelligence Committee is going to begin its investigation, which involves those claims, but also more broadly allegations of Russian interference in the election. And in the run-up to that, the committees were saying, we need evidence, we need to see what you've got. And by the end of the week, we've had the head of the Senate and the House Intelligence Committee saying, we haven't seen any indication of it. And yet Mr. Trump keeps coming out and saying that it happened, even making a comparison with Angela Merkel, to whom it did actually happen. And you'll notice that she didn't weigh in there. It didn't go down well in Germany at all when that incident took place.
Barbara Plant-Usher in Washington. So how did the whole affair go down from a German perspective? Is it even important for Angela Merkel to have good relations with Donald Trump? Our Berlin correspondent is Jenny Hill.
Undoubtedly, and that's of course for economic reasons. Look at the trading relationship, and because of course Mrs. Merkel in effect is representing the EU at these talks. But bear in mind too that Mrs. Merkel faces an election year. Donald Trump is a profoundly unpopular person among German people. His rhetoric doesn't go down at all well here amongst the public, nor of course amongst politicians too. There's been a great deal of alarm in Berlin at some of what he's had to say. So I think Mrs. Merkel has been walking a bit of a tightrope. She's got to make this relationship work. At the same time, she can't be seen at home to be cozying up to Donald Trump, albeit simply to try and strike good trading relations with him. And I think we saw her trying to walk that diplomatic tightrope when you saw her trying to put this relationship into a historical context. She began her bit of the press conference by talking about how Germany owes a deal of gratitude to America because of its help in rebuilding after the war and so on. And I think there Mrs. Merkel was trying to get across the idea that this presidential relationship is one in a long line, and that she is simply trying to represent Germany and the EU's interests on a world stage.
Jenny Hill in Berlin. Other news now, the poet, playwright and Nobel laureate Derek Walcott has died at the age of 87 at his home in St. Lucia. Praised for his melodious and sensitive style, the Nobel Committee regarded Derek Walcott as the great poet of West Indian culture, and his life in the Caribbean was the biggest influence on his work. The Cultural Development Foundation of St. Lucia said the world had lost a literary icon. Our arts editor Will Gompertz looks back at his life.
The fishermen rowing homeward in the dusk do not consider the stillness through which they move.
Derek Walcott found he was often defined as a black writer. That is not how he saw himself. He was, he said, first and foremost, a Caribbean writer.
If I'm not in St. Lucia, I'm not home. I lived in New York, not for long, in London, other places, but all the time at the back of my head it all sounds so very corny, but it's true. It's missing the sound of the sea.
Dante, Shakespeare, Chaucer and Yeats were all reassessed through his literary lens, as was Homer in 1990 when he wrote his epic poem Omeros, in which Achilles finds himself relocated to the West Indies.
Hector ran splashing in shallows mixed with the drizzle towards Achilles, his cutlass lifted. The surf, in anger, gnashing its tail like a foaming dogfight.
2 years after the publication of Omeros, Derek Walcott was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. His international reputation was made, his status assured, as a writer and academic, who the poet Glenn Maxwell vividly remembers as a lecturer at Boston University.
To me, he was just extraordinary. It's like he breathed in.
Traffic jam ahead.
And was writing about the Caribbean now and the world now. He was a tough teacher as well.
Derek Walcott's life was not without controversy. He was accused of sexual harassment by female students in the US, which led to him being very publicly overlooked for the Oxford Professor of Poetry post in 2009. 2 years later, he was awarded the T.S. Eliot Prize for White Egrets, a collection of poetry that demonstrated once again that he had a unique and important literary voice.
Will Gompertz on Derek Walcott, who's died aged 87. This is the newsroom from the BBC World Service. Still to come, will voice recognition software make it easier to screen asylum seekers? First, our headlines from Kathy.
President Trump has insisted he is not an isolationist, but a free trader seeking fair deals to bring jobs back to America. He has also stood by his claims that he was wiretapped by the Obama administration, telling the visiting German Chancellor Angela Merkel that they've had that experience in common. And the Nobel Prize-winning poet Derek Walcott, considered one of the great voices of Caribbean literature, has died in St. Lucia.
South Sudan is experiencing famine and severe economic hardship, but the government there is spending at least half its budget on security and weapons. That's the key finding of a panel of UN experts reporting to the Security Council. The panel also said 1 million people are near starvation, and the number in urgent need is expected to rise to 5.5 million by mid-July. Our Africa editor James Cotnell has more.
Last month, famine was declared in southern Unity State, that's in the north of the country, and this is a man-made famine created by the actions of the soldiers who are fighting in this civil war. And this UN panel of experts who are looking into the situation of the country have accused the government of spending more than half of their budget, perhaps even much more than half of their budget, on the military, on security, on weapons, at a time when this famine is taking place and it threatens more of the country. So 100,000 people are facing starvation right now, but that number could dramatically increase if aid doesn't get to people and if the fighting doesn't stop. So this is a pretty serious accusation for the South Sudanese government. In the past they've said, well, you know, we need to spend money on the military situation, and they may say similar things again, but I think it will be met with indignation in the country because the situation is so bad. Not just the famine in places like Unity State, but just the economic situation in the country as a whole. A South Sudanese friend told me the other day that it's phenomenally expensive to buy even an orange, that people in the capital Juba were eating only once a day. So if the government is spending so much money on the military, as the UN experts say, that will be of concern to people throughout the country. Now, these UN experts,
in half a mile, turn right.
To be imposed by the UN Security Council. However, that's something that's been defeated in the Security Council in the past. Countries like Russia are opposed to it, and it seems quite unlikely to ever be brought in.
James Cotnell. Staying in Africa, Kenya has sent extra soldiers to 4 northern counties to disarm civilians.
At end of the road, turn right, onto Fieldingar Ranch Road.
It's been made worse by a severe drought there. In a bid to restore security, the Kenyan President, Uhuru Kenyatta, has announced that people who refuse to give up their firearms will be dealt with as enemies of the state. I spoke to our correspondent in Nairobi, Catherine Bayero-Hanga, who's been to Laikipia, one of the counties affected. She told me about the ongoing...
Turn right.
What really has become of grave concern in that area are these cattle invasions onto ranches, mostly owned by white owners, and some of them are British. And so what's been happening for the last few months is that because of a severe drought in the area, pastoralists who have cattle have decided to move their animals onto these carefully managed ranches because they can't find pasture. And obviously this has led to some confrontation with local landowners. The allegation is that they've been incited by local politicians to do this as well.
And there's even been at least one death there. What are the authorities doing then?
They've tried to move some of these herdsmen off the land, but obviously they're not enough of the officers. They're not
Everybody needs a place to call their home. Everybody needs someone to call their own. Even when you're lonely, no, you're not alone. You're one of us, one of us, one of us, one of us. Is this your starring role, or just a cameo? Who are you living for, living? When you can't take no more.
Traffic jam ahead.
Everybody's skin is different now.
Jenna Marbles. The YouTube 15.
Traffic jam ahead. Route recalculation.
Brilliantly explaining why 24-karat magic makes you want to dance. Must be so fun to be smart. I'm just over here trying not to hurt people while I dance. 70% flailing, 30% apologizing. Bruno Mars now has 525 million views on that video. This is the YouTube 15 on Hits 1, and these are the top trending emerging songs from YouTube this week. Trending for the first time, we have 18-year-old singer-songwriter and social media star Maggie Lindemann. The description of this video reads, "Pretty Girl was inspired by my experiences growing up on social media and being constantly judged and underestimated based on the superficial, which is something I think a lot of girls are going through right now." Speak for us, Maggie. Maggie will do our speaking from now on. Thank you, girl. Thanks. The lyric video received over 4 million views in a month, and the official video released just a week ago already has over 1 million views. Here's her song, Pretty Girl, on the YouTube 15 Hits 1. Very comfortable.
Daughter and sister, sometimes it's hard for me to show that I'm more than just a rumor or a song on your computer. There's more to me than people know. Some days I'm broke,
2017. Your stolen mattress is making it across 2 summers. I'm impressed. 1.2 billion views on the Chainsmokers video for Closer. And the cover with only the words Bing 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 Bong has over 1 million views. It's a real thing. It's lit. This is the YouTube 15 on Hits 1, and these are the trendiest songs of the week, according to YouTube. Continuing to trend, we've got Jax Jones and Ray. She has some of the deepest burns in this song. I need aloe after every time I hear it. Girl, who hurt you? Point them out. We can throw shapes together, but it doesn't mean you're in my circle. Oh my God, I'm deceased. And on Wednesdays, we wear pink. Also, one of the top comments says, there's a rumor she's in jail for murdering that beat. Well played, sir. 10 internet points to you. With 48 million views, here is You Don't Know Me on the YouTube 15. Hits 1. It's a joke. She's not in jail. I'm in jail. I've been in jail this whole time. In the kennel that I live in, that I created for myself. There's poop everywhere. Save me. Help.
Yeah, time is money, so don't put your mind. Seeing all of my girls, I'ma have a good time. Stop back with your chit-chat, come to my vibe. Stop back with your chit-chat, come to my vibe. See, you can't get too much of the thing. Small man dressed up in the finest things. Well, please don't just come, don't say a damn thing. See your iPhone camera flashing. Please step back, it's my style, you're cramping. You here for long, go no, I'm just passing. Do you wanna drink? Nah, thanks for asking. Ooh, nah, yeah. Don't act like you know me, like you know me. Nah, yeah. I am not your homie, not your homie. Ooh, nah, yeah. Don't act like you know me, like you know me. Nah, yeah. You don't know me, okay. Shapes together, but it doesn't mean you're in my circle. Yeah, it's too late that I'm pulling on track. I think I keep up, they better fall back. Cause money look better when I see it outside.
Prepare to turn right in half a mile.
See, you can't get too much of a good thing. Small man dressed up in the finest things. Well, please watch out, don't say a damn thing. See your iPhone camera flashing. Please step back, it's my style, you're cramping. You here for long, go no, I'm just passing. Do you wanna drink? Nah, thanks for asking. Ooh, nah, yeah. Don't act like you know me, like you know me. Nah, yeah. I am not your homie, not your homie. Ooh, nah, yeah. Don't act like you know me, like you know me. Nah, yeah. You don't know me, okay. You know me, like you know me, nah, yeah. I am not your homie, not your homie, nah, yeah. Don't act like you know me, like you know me, nah, yeah. You don't know me, okay. Please step back, it's my style, you're cramping. You here for long, go no, I'm just passing. Do you wanna drink? Nah, thanks for asking. Ooh, nah, yeah. Don't act like you know me, like you know me. Nah, yeah. I am not your homie, not your homie. Nah, yeah. Don't act like you know me, like you know me. Nah, yeah. You don't know me, okay. You don't know me, okay.
she's hot. Hottie! Doesn't overlook one small fact. She's a host of Hits 1, and that's a fact.
Left swipe.
Left swipe that.
You gotta swipe it left.
The YouTube 15 on Hits 1.
Hashtag. Expand. In 1,000 feet, turn right onto I-15 southbound.
The bar is where I go. Me and my friends at the table doing shots.
Take the next right onto I-15 southbound.
With just me, and trust me, I'll give it a chance. Now take my hand, stop it, and the man on the jukebox, and then we start to dance. And now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me. Say what? Let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead. I'm in love with the shape of you. Push and pull like a magnet. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. Last night you were in my room, and now my bedsheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body, like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. 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 Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of when we can. We let the story begin. We're going out on our first date. You and me are thrifty, so all you can eat. Fill up your bag and I fill up the plate. We talk for hours and hours about sweet and sour and how your family's doing okay. And even getting a taxi, kissing the backseat, tell the driver make the radio play. And I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me. Say what? Let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead. I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. Last night you were in my room, and now my bedsheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. 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 Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you. Come on, be my baby. Come on, 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 Come on. I'm in love with the shape of you. Push and pull like a magnet. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. Last night you were in my room, now my bedsheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. Come on, be my baby. Come on, I'm in love with your body. Come on, be my baby. Come on, I'm in love with your body. Come on, be my baby. Come on, I'm in love with your body. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you.
It's Hits 1. YouTube 15 on. Hosted by Jenna Marbles.
Shape of You off its record-breaking album Divide continued to trend. It smashed Spotify's record for most streams in a single week, 375 million streams. That video has 395 million views, over 3 million likes. So many millions! My goodness! Gryffindor is one powerful house. Wingardium Leviosa. This is the YouTube 15 on Hits 1, and these are the hottest songs straight from YouTube this week. Speaking of Griffins, oh boy, what are you gonna do? This next song is by two producers, Griffin and Millennium. I'm not kidding, those are the names. I'm not making more Harry Potter jokes. Yeah, that was a fire segue. I need a fire extinguisher. Wow, bad, just leave. It's featuring 18-year-old Daya, who has crushed it on our show in the past with the Chainsmokers and Don't Let Me Down, which won a Grammy, by the way. So let's fix that and say it's featuring 18-year-old Grammy winner Daya. That's better. The song is called Feel Good. Here it is on the YouTube 15. It's 1. 10 points to Hufflepuff for putting up with me. Ravenclaw gets nothing. Slytherin can leave.
Yeah,